Hey everyone, CJ here with the CATA Secondary School Podcast with an exciting announcement about the CATA Small Grant Program. CATA is proud to support our members with small grants to help them excel in their work. Each year, we award 4 $200 grants to deserving athletic trainers. You can use this money for durable medical equipment, supplies, or continuing education units. All you need to do to be eligible is be an NATA member who resides in Colorado. The application deadline for this fall is September 1st, so be sure to apply for a chance to get the support you need. For all details and to submit your application, head over to the CATA website under grants or go to www.coloradoata.org/small grant program. Good luck. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the CATA Secondary School Podcast. Here with Ryan Hart and the rest of the committee, we got Katie, Moto, Amy, Ashley, and Megan. And today we are talking about conflict resolution, Ryan.
Yeah, CJ, this is an exciting topic. I think that's going to benefit all of our listeners. So I'm excited to hear our committee's perspective on conflict resolution and maybe some of the ways that they've dealt with conflict within their own, setting, whether it be coaches, athletic directors, parents. So let's dive right in.
Yeah, we're not very combative at all, so there will not be any opinions here. I do have one section that I threw in there just to try and get Katie to jump off and just go ham. So we'll see how that goes.
We can always count on Katie for that.
Yeah. So we're going to be going through a couple different topics. The first topic is going to be conflict is unavoidable. And then we're going to go into strategies for effective communication, finish out with strategies for conflict resolution, and add in some of our thoughts and stories there. So without further ado, conflict is unavoidable. I think this is the main thing that everyone needs to understand. If you don't already, we can talk until we're blue in the face about conflict resolution and avoiding and being proactive. It's going to happen. That's just part of life.
I think for me, the best way that I try to avoid coach conflict is have a really in-depth, like preseason meeting where I sit all my coaches for that season down and I go over my rules and regulations, how I run the athletic training room, expectations for communication, how we handle injuries, concussion protocols, and those types of things. And
Absolutely.
I lay it out right at the beginning and I say, "Hey, if you have conflicts, if you have issues, like just bring them to me immediately. Don't stew on it. Don't assume I'm being rude. Like if I send you a text and you read it with negative tone, don't because there was no negative tone. Um just like blunt straightforwardness because I don't have time to send you a nice, "Hey, how you doing?" text.
Ashley, I think that's a really good point. Like when you're having those conversations preseason, it's not a, hey, I'm conveying this information to you, you're nodding and saying yes. It's an actual conversation. Like,
Yeah.
explain, here's how I communicate. Do you have any questions? Like, this is not just me relaying this information, but this is us developing a relationship that we're going to work together throughout this season.
Yeah, and I think, I think if you come into this treating it like a conversation, come into this meeting, this preseason meeting with your coaches, treating it like a conversation, it's not, this is my way, this is how it's going to be done. Come into this getting their feedback as well, understanding because everybody has communication preferences. Some people respond better with texting, some respond better with phone calls, some face to face. Learn your coaches, have that open dialogue, and come kind of with an open agenda so that you can understand what's going to be best for the people that are around you. Katie?
Yeah, I think you're already saying it, but it's all about the communication and the beginning of that conversation. And if you start it at the front end, it's a lot easier to have. I'm a face conflict head on person. So if there's something going on that I disagreed with, I'm coming straight to that coach to be like, hey, this is what happened. This is what we need to do differently next time. Let's do it this way in the future. Things like that. But if you can get ahead of it at a preseason meeting before the season starts, part of it is just, as an athletic trainer, letting the coaches know you're a part of every program, not just their program. So the
Yes.
football coach and the soccer coach are going to have very different ways of handling a situation. Um, and I prefer face to face communication because then a lot less gets lost. You get all of your verbal, nonverbal, whatever cues in there that can help with that conversation. Because, like Ashley said, I'm going to shoot you a text and it's not going to be like, hey, how are things going today? It's going to be like, hey, this kid, this injury, this information. And there's not going to be a lot of fluff around it. I have too many things to do.
Absolutely. Moto, do you have a take on that?
I think as far as that communication part goes, it is, as Ryan said in the past, like, is it always good to have solution and bring that conflict or the challenging part, so that we'll be able to have some sort of action item to take on instead of just bringing the heat. And at that point, you will not have any conversation just moving forward. So that's another part that I wanted to add.
Yeah, and everyone kind of building on that, everyone responds differently. So I feel like a lot of people are like, well, I'm going to deal with it this way because that's how I am. And understand that everyone responds to communication, feedback, criticism differently. So it's almost like you kind of have to be a jack of all trades. And like, I'm going to approach this coach. I know I can be straightforward and be like, okay, here's the deal. Let's do this. And like, okay, if I do that with another coach, they might start getting like bristly with me. And I almost have to kind of like come at it from a different angle of, hey, what if we do this? And kind of, I have to speak to different coaches differently. So take that into account. Everyone's going to have a different communication style that is effective for them. So I totally agree with you, Katie. And that's how I would love, I love communicating that way. I'm like, hey, I'm straightforward. Here's the point. I don't have time to sugarcoat this. Let's move on. I have found that sometimes I have to like kind of just, I don't want to say like hold their hand, but almost like bring it down to like okay, I'm going to take a little bit more time to kind of walk you through this and communicate. And here's why, because I feel like that coach responds better. And then I get them on my side faster than if I say, hey, so-and-so's got this, can't practice today. We're going to do this. Then they're going to be like, well, why? Why not this? Why not this? And I have to almost walk them through my line of thinking. But once I do that, they're on my side. So
Yeah, I think that's a super good point. And one other thing to think about is when you have teams with multiple coaches, like football, for instance, where you have 14 or more coaches, um, designating one of those coaches to be your sports medicine kind of contact. And so that is the one person you reach out to, and that coach is then responsible for disseminating that information to the correct person. um like, you can also make sure all the other coaches know that they can come to you and come talk to you if they have questions and such. But that one person that you reach out to, I think I have found that really helps me, as well as that kind of takes one more task off the head coach, so they're not as busy and they're not as chaotic when we're trying to communicate with those kinds of problems.
I like that. That's a really good point because the head coach has a lot of things going on. To delegate that's really smart. Actually, I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, what about when it comes to like following protocols and communicating that aspect of our job with your coaches?
I feel like that's one of like following protocols, reporting injuries. Those are like two of the most likely areas to have conflict. And you again, I feel like you just have to kind of, each person's different, each situation's different. You have to almost have an explanation, but also a stern tone, because you can't just like, hey, I'd really like it if you followed this protocol. It's like, no, this needs to be followed. You're an adult. This is the expectation. Towing that line is super hard. I'm not great at it. It's something that takes a lot of practice, and I don't know if anybody will ever be perfect at it. It's just, there's a certain time where if coaches aren't following protocols, understand there might be some that comes from ignorance, and that's like they got a lot of things going on. Cool. Maybe we need to reevaluate where our priorities are and make sure like safety is closer to the top than it might be right now. So don't come as like you didn't follow protocol on purpose. Like I usually gave a conversation or two, and then it started becoming a consistent issue. I'm like, okay, hey, this ain't happening. We need to get this fixed. But yeah, I feel like that's, protocols and injuries are pretty much where all of the conflicts with my coaching staff has come from.
I think it's an educational piece too, CJ. Like you said, it's not like ignorance feels a little harsh when we're talking about our coaches just because it's kind of a mean sounding word, right?
It does have
But
a
they're
negative
not.
connotation, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's not on purpose ignorance. Sometimes they're just completely oblivious to it. What do
Mhm.
you mean if I played with that when I was in high school, right? We're living in the 70s again, and well, the concussions didn't exist in the 70s. So what do you mean it's a big deal if he has a headache every day, right? And that's a bad example. I understand that, but it's the best one I've got off the top of my head. But it's about education too. Okay, well that leads to this, leads to this, leads to this, and a lot of times just explaining the entirety of the situation, right? We're sitting right now, we're week 1 of football season as it is as we record, and it's okay. If this kid plays this week in week 1, does it matter so much week 1 versus week 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, right? Like how much does right now's decision affect later's decision? And sometimes just opening up that perspective can help a coach understand why the protocol is in place in the first place.
I think that, as you said at the beginning of having the preseason meeting, but I think it's also presenting a united front, even though that's maybe a little bit adversarial way of approaching it, but with your athletic director and your athletic secretary to make sure that you guys are all putting the same message forward in terms of the expectations at the beginning of the meeting. So when we say policies, it's not just me being like, hey, I really need you guys to practice that EAP, or I really need you to pull the kids inside at that when lightning is at 10 miles. It's the AD is saying the same thing. It's that the athletic secretary or administrative assistant is saying the same thing. So they're not just getting it from us; they're getting it from all the different sources. And it's a consistent message. We're part of a team.
Yeah.
We're part of that athletic administration of pushing those safety policies forward.
Yeah, absolutely, Amy. And that really touched on, following protocols, reporting injuries. What about communicating schedule changes? Any thoughts from our group on how effectively to discuss schedule changes with coaches? Because we all know schedule changes happen within athletics, and usually we are the last to know. And usually it is right after that event was supposed to have started that we get notified it was canceled.
Ryan, we are not usually the last to know. We are pretty consistently always the last to know.
I agree on that. Like as far as like head coach goes, or coaches who have regular work before the athletics, I know they do have a lot on
Mhm.
their plate, and the one person um, they missed to notify or notify the schedule change is athletic trainer. That is big deal to us, but at the same time for them, it might be just one
Yeah.
person that they missed. And I feel like to me, in like on these case, I would stop bugging them for it, and I just start following what their communication to us. For us, for our school, we use platform that athletes are on it, and it's not Snapchat, it's not those social media, but we can use a platform and we can be part of the team on that, so that you can get those information, um, like last minute changes. It is not the ideal, but at the same time, you will know through that. That's one way that I kind of
Yeah,
tackle
it's a
that.
good point. Like this is this is something where everyone in this on this call right now is nodding their head as you're talking. We all deal with this. I don't think the ideal solution is ever really going to happen. Like it's just something we're constantly have to work on, and that gets you the information, Moto. So I'd like that idea a lot. Megan.
Yeah, I would say something very similar. I tell all of my coaches from the very beginning of the season, put me on every communication platform you have, whether that's you send weekly emails to parents, and unfortunately it does get into multiple apps. Like I have Sports U for one team and I have I don't even group me for another, and a variety of things like that. But then I tell them always, I want more information. I would rather see the whole list of like who's helping with concessions and know all of that, because those are the conversations where game changes get sent out and game time changes and things like that, that they just happen to be part of that conversation. And so I just tell the coaches all the time, put me on every communication. I'd rather see everything and delete and kind of go through what's pertinent to me than wait for you to remember to also include me in a conversation or for, things like that. So I'm just like, just put me on everything. I'd rather see your whole group me about who's late because they forgot their socks than not know that your game time changed from 3 to 5.
That's super good, and I love that. And something I've instituted lately, because we were having a lot of issues with the schedule changes at my school, is that my athletic director and I now have a standing Monday meeting. And every time, as soon as I get to the school, I go stop by his office and we have a quick, and I mean super quick, like it's a 2 minute, hey, these are the games for the week. Are we all on the same page? Yep, yep. Everything sounds great. No other issues. Cool. Have a great day. See you later. And even just that meeting, I have found that it has put me on the forefront of his mind more often. And so when
Good
there
point.
are schedule changes, he is so much better at communicating those to me
Yeah.
now. Um, and so that has truly helped us. So that standing every single Monday meeting, check in, schedule review talk.
Yeah, those little touch points are so crucial, Ashley, for the reasons you mentioned. Amy, did you want to add to this topic?
I will say, going back to being a team member of the athletic department administration, having I have been on so many different platforms over the years, and you're right, your phone is just dinging, and you hear, yes, who forgot their socks, and what uniform color are they having that day, and yes, it is a lot of information to sift through. Where I felt like I was actually missing some of those schedule changes because I finally needed to mute some of that just for my own personal sanity.
Mhm.
But it was really, really great this past year. We actually, as an athletic department, we got everybody on the same platform. It took 2 seasons to do it, but it is possible. And man, that has really just made everything so much easier, being able to go to one place. And you still have to circle through all the different chats, but asking your athletic director, hey, can we all get on one platform? Because they're likely dealing with the same thing as us, of trying to figure out kind of like what's going on, with different facility issues and stuff like that. So, I mean, bringing that forward to our athletic directors, in addition to those Monday morning meetings, I think it is possible.
Yeah, well said, Amy. Katie, final thoughts before we move on to our next topic?
Yeah, I was just gonna pile on to Ashley's statement. Going to your athletic director and just staying in the forefront of their mind for schedule changes, like everything, the official schedule has to come through their office. To get referees and umpires and whatever has to go through their office. So a lot of times the information I got was the referee change schedule. I got added to that email because they're like, "Hey, we changed the game time of this," and I'm like, "Oh." The officials don't care that I'm the athletic trainer on that email, but my athletic secretary did, and that was really great of her. So those touch points of being in the office and then just being proactive and being on your calendar ahead of time, to look at it and, oh, they've already updated the calendar. Guess I know the game has changed. Staying proactive on your end of it helps a lot too. And then you're not depending on someone to send you the information. You know where to go to get it.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Getting on some of those external communication change from your AD, and that leads us really well into the next conflict, which is after CJ finishes adding check marks.
All the checks have been added.
Okay. Which is conflicts with administration. Let's talk about supporting the athletic trainer from an administrative perspective. What can you guys offer in relation to conflict resolution when it comes to support of the athletic trainer from administration?
I'll kick this one off, Ryan. I think
Yes, CJ.
this takes a lot of work on the front end. This is not something that once you've already, like, if an issue comes up and I don't already have admin on my side, it's a downhill or uphill battle, whichever one. It's going downhill. It's an uphill battle. And this takes a while. Like this, they have their own. So in Colorado, or at least in our county, I don't know if this is statewide, but our ADs are also APs, which is so foreign to me because in Virginia it was not that way. Like AD was a full-time job, and it still seems like AD here is a full-time job. I don't know how these athletic directors do it.
Yeah.
They do so much. It's crazy. So
Yeah.
they have a lot on their plate, and there's a lot of policies that they have to remember. They're not looking at the protocols every single day like we are. So it's really just building that. Again, I feel like we're repeating ourselves a lot, but it's building that relationship, have that communication, have them understand here's the why. And then, I mean, you're still going to have some times where they're just like, well, I don't agree with that. And like, you need to figure out how to navigate that response of, okay, I understand that you don't like this protocol, but this is what's in place for the best interest of the kiddos and the athletes to make sure they're safe. And like, here's the research if you want, but like, I just need to know that I have your support if I make this call, because that's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
I feel like that it's going to take a while. Don't go into this conversation expecting you to just say one thing and admin's gonna be like, cool. You might, that's awesome if you do. I've had that happen before.
Yep.
But you have to be proactive with building that relationship to be able to get that support, because they have to trust you, they have to know you, and then they're going to give that back in turn.
Yeah. Excellent point, Ashley.
Yeah, and I will piggyback on that because it is the all upfront work, and it is sitting down with your direct admin oversight, usually the athletic director, and it is making sure that you guys are on the same page with all of your policies. For us, we are employed by a hospital system and contracted to the schools. So the athletic directors have kind of learned that they have no say in the medical policies, that they just have to follow it. And so that has significantly helped, but also just having those conversations and making sure they actually understand the policies and the whys has really helped, like, totally curb conflict for us. Um, and then once you have that, both that relationship that CJ mentioned and the understanding that they have of the policies, and then you also, again, like with the coaches, you implement your communication strategies. And like, hey, when there's an issue, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to come across it, and solve it. And you plan all of those things ahead of time. That way, when things do happen, you already have a system in place for figuring out these answers. And your ADs or your administrator is already on your side. They already know and understand. And so that is what's going to help really create and curb like those problems.
Yeah, very well said. Amy, any final thoughts before we move to the big one, parents?
I think just remembering all of us have AD turnover. That's just a reality of life. And so, where something is commonplace to us, like you said, setting up reasonable expectations from the beginning, but remembering like each time that we get somebody new, even if they're moving from an assistant athletic director into a full or something like that, just making sure we're starting from that base common knowledge of our policies and procedures.
Yeah, and I mean that applies to our coaches as well. Oftentimes
Mhm.
coach staff is high turnover, more high than your AD or assistant AD. So that's a really good point. All right, the big one, parent conflict. Communicating activity restrictions. Open it
Hey,
up to
Jimmy
everybody.
ain't playing. Deal with it.
I wish it was that simple. What you got, Ashley?
For my parents, exactly the same thing with the ADs and coaches is every single season we have created a full like fall sports parent meeting. And then we like our athletic director has forced our coaches to have their parent meeting right after that meeting, so we get the highest amount of turnout, and also so parents only have to come to the school once for these.
Yeah.
And I am the first person to speak. I'm always the first on the PowerPoints. My AD will introduce me, and then I will go into my little spiel for the parents on who I am, what I do. Here's my contact information. And that just getting myself in front of them, they know who I am, they know what's going on. That has helped so much with any parent conflict. At this point, they almost, even new parents, they don't even question what I say. They're just like, oh, okay, yeah, that's you. Okay, that's what we have to do. Okay. Um, and then I am also fortunate enough to have an athletic director who is very supportive. So when there is a parent causing problems and they don't want to listen to our policies, I just say, sorry, go talk to my athletic director. Have fun.
That is such a great point, Ashley. Those parent meetings, I mean, if you are fortunate enough to get, into a parent meeting with each team, that, like, capitalize on that. Don't vomit though on your parents everything. Utilize AI, utilize technology, like write your spill out with Chat GPT and say, hey, condense this into 5 minutes. You want to give bullet points, quick action points, something along those lines. Moto, what did you have to give our listeners about parent?
I think with other topics as well, but just telling them or sharing where we are coming from. So having that policy and procedures in line and actually utilizing that. And another part is having that fall coaches meeting, parent meeting, to show our face out so that they know who we are and what we do. And it is the best interest for us, not just me telling you or a person who is working for the school telling the parent this is what it is. I think it's the biggest part. Um, just having that communication ahead of
Mm-hmm.
time is always good, and also going into, let's say, having a student with long-term injury and parents, three of us meeting to just hit the point of why we are doing this and how we are doing this is always helpful for them to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead,
Oh,
CJ.
sorry, Ryan. Yeah, just touching on those parent meetings. The biggest thing I think for parents is you have to over communicate, and you have to over communicate early. Go to the meetings, but also understand that the parents who are coming to these meetings a lot of times aren't the ones that you need to be communicating this to, because they're the ones who are showing up to the meetings. They know what's going on. They're listening, paying attention. It's the ones that are missing these meetings, aren't completely clued in to what's going on. So what I found helps also is I'll get the email distribution list, or I'll send something um, out to all the parents that just says, hey guys, and it's the same stuff I'm going over in the meeting. It's a little more detailed with lots of links. Here's all the information, blah, blah, blah. But then understand your job's not done. Whenever a kid gets injured and has to be restricted from activity, you're in a secondary school setting. Do not let a 15, 16, 17-year-old kid communicate his his athletic participation status to the parents. All that's going to happen is you're going to be like, hey, you have a bruise on your knee, blah, blah, and they're going to go home like, I hurt my knee. I can't play. I might be out for a while. And then the parents will be like, what in the world do we need to take you to the emergency room? What's going on? Why didn't CJ communicate this? And then it's just going to like snowball. So if there's any activity restrictions, it's not a bad idea to just have that be your benchmark to say, okay, if they're out, if they're out for like the last hour of practice and then we're going to re-eval tomorrow, that's fine. But if it's something where it's like, hey, I don't know if you can practice today. You came in before practice from an injury that happened yesterday. Let's take today off. Contact the parents. Yes, it's more work for you, but also that's something you probably should be doing, communicating with their guardian and parent. And also it just helps. Think of it as getting ahead of any potential conflict. Don't let them communicate. I know, Katie, you've mentioned this before. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I always say we don't allow the children to be the communicators. We communicate with the adults. That's a big priority for me. But also just remembering, like, most parents have not experienced an athletic trainer until they get to high school, right? Like, that's a big piece of this. So even if you go to the parent meeting, they're like, who is this person that says that they have full control over whether or not my child gets into the game? It's it's a matter of explaining your position at the school and explaining that I'm not here to maliciously hold your child out of play. I am essentially a free healthcare provider on site who says logically this is why we're having this kid sit out for X amount of days or whatever the injury entails, and explaining, yes, I evaluated it. I don't see the need for x-rays today, but your ankle sprain usually takes, 3 to 5 days, 2 weeks to heal. And we have to go along their functionality, not just my kid wants to play today, they're playing in a basketball game. It's okay, well, they can't jump yet, so maybe we don't hit the basketball court today. And explaining that to the parent so they know who you are, that you have an education, that there's a reason the school employs you to be there for that
Mm-hmm.
position.
That's a really good point, Katie. Speak to both the athlete and the parents, one on their level, but also from a professional healthcare perspective. Don't speak over their head, but speak professionally and with confidence that you know what you're doing. You understand what you're talking about. Amy, what you want to add on to this?
I think twofold. First of all, CJ said sending out the email blast. I think that's fantastic because sometimes you don't realize that the information is going to be pertinent until they get into that situation. So whether or not that be having an email to refer back to, or some of us are lucky enough to get a little bit of space on the athletic website, and so that we can post some of those, even if it's not in the format of our policies and procedures, but like a bullet point of, hey, this is how you get in contact with me. Hey, a return to play protocol exists for our concussions. You should expect communication from me. And then second, yes, I think the phone calls are fantastic. I also really try to take advantage of, I say to the kid, like, hey, when's your parent picking you up? A lot of times we're, kind of wrapping up stuff at the end of practice. I am much better in person than I am over the phone, of having that a little bit of a human connection. So I walk outside, I shake their hand. Now we have made a personal connection where I can look up into the stands now and I know who that parent is. And I think that really helps in terms of just creating that relationship before you have any type of conflict is so, so nice. And it's just, hey, like Katie said, hey, I'm here. I'm free healthcare. I'm here to help. How can I help you? What questions do you have?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Amy. Anytime that you can get FaceTime with the parents, I think is invaluable, because when that injury happens, now they can put, a face with a name. They understand who they're talking to on the phone. Even if it's, and just a tip here, if you have an injured athlete and you're needing to talk to the parent, one of the things that I prefer doing is utilizing the student athlete's cell phone to contact the parents. Oftentimes parents will dismiss unknown numbers even if it's the school, but reassuring through the student athlete, hey, Ryan needs to speak with you, but I'm okay. Here's Ryan. Let that be the first thing. You want to preface that. But I think what you said, Amy, is really invaluable. Ashley, what do you got?
She's got her
You
mute
need
on.
to
That's what she's got.
wait. I'm gonna jump on top of you,
Yeah,
Ryan,
go
real
ahead,
quick,
Katie. Jump
because
in
you
there.
also what you just said totally makes sense. You also have to remember when you're calling them in that moment, their kid may have never been hurt before,
Yes.
and so
Mhm.
you might be dealing with a panicked parent.
Yes.
And so one, they have to talk to their kid, right? Like always put the kid on the phone so they hear their voice, it calms them down. But two, if you have to say concussion, if you have to say ACL, if you have to say major injury to them, you also have to remember that is going to instantly put them into a spiral. So having the forethought to bring a calming presence to the conversation. Hey, I know this is going to be a lot. This is what just happened. This is what I know right now. And this is our next steps we're going to take so that it calms that person down. Because if you're dealing with an already highly agitated person, and I just mean agitated in excited state, not agitated as angry, they just might respond however they respond,
Mhm.
and you have to be a calm voice of reason in that situation.
And don't beat around the bush when you're giving the diagnosis. Be straight, be clear, and then
Right.
answer as many questions as they have and be calm while you're doing it. A lot of the times that parents have had issues, it's the athletic trainer just didn't effectively articulate the injury. They explained around it, and then the parents like, okay, so does my kid have a concussion or not?
Yeah.
So be clear, be concise. Like, you're going to tell them diagnosis anyway, so just say it and then answer any questions that they might have.
That's a really good point, CJ. The other thing that I'll add on to what Katie said, and then we'll swing it over to Ashley, is try not to give serious diagnosis news over the phone if possible. If you can get the parent to come, to the school, explain, hey, this is what I think may be going on. I'd really like if you can come pick your child up. Let's have a conversation face to face in person. And that's when you explain plan of care, all of that kind of thing. I think it's going to go over for you a lot better than if you're trying to explain all of this over the phone. parents can't see their child. They maybe have never seen you or met you, so they don't really understand who you are, or if what you're saying should be taken as serious as you're trying to explain it. So Ashley, I'm curious to hear what you have to add on to that.
Yeah, those are great strategies for those severe injuries, and I love those points. For the less severe injuries where I'm just doing like a quick check-in, maybe it's just a little ankle sprain, we need to do a parent check-in. I do, like you said, Ryan, I make the kid use their phone to call their parents and get them on the phone, reassure them that they're fine, and then with me on speaker right next to them,
Mhm.
also usually while I'm like taping another athlete. So this helps me like multitask. Um I will give my quick spiel like, hey, little Johnny has a sprained ankle. As soon as he can run straight with no pain, we'll start getting him back into practice. I try to include the functional goal, so not just a timeline because I don't know how long it's going to take their kid to get back. And I include, some quick self-care at home, do A, B, and C. And then I also, if I can, I will make the kid actually tell most of this to the parent while in front of me because I want to teach the kids how to actually communicate this stuff too, and
Such a good
teach them
point.
to
I love
take
that.
more accountability and both their injury, but also learning a little better communication at the same time. So I'll have the kid explain it to their parent in front of me, and I'll kind of help chime in and correct a little bit and then do my quick spiel. And I do try to include that functional goal. And so, like someone was saying earlier, like, hey, you can't even jump. How are you going to play basketball? So I'll say that. I'll be like, hey, as soon as they can jump and run and cut to the side, we're going to get them back into practice. And the parent with that is like, oh, okay, they have like actual goals to think about.
Those are some really good tips, Ashley. Megan, let's kind of hear from you on this last topic before we kind of get moving on to our final section of this episode.
I forgot my hand was raised.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're
Well,
good.
Amy,
But
do you have something
I would just say that as everybody was talking through things, that it was like, yep, that's what we do. It's what we do. And one of those things too, some of our young athletic trainers, our early emerging professionals, I remember that was the worst part of my job when I started in the secondary schools, was having to call a parent and have this conversation. I hated that more than anything. And while I'm several years into this and it's not my favorite part of the job, I think all of those are really great points about if you can do it face to face. I mean, most of these kiddos are being picked up by their parent. That's an awesome thing, what Amy said. Having the kiddo call, that's always my go-to because they're more likely to answer their phones. And then just like you guys said, building those relationships of when you see parents in the stands. Like there are a lot of times where I'm at a JV basketball game and I'm sitting in the stands just chatting with parents that I have worked with before and sort of building new relationships with other parents around them. And like, oh yeah, hi, I'm Megan. We haven't had the pleasure of meeting, luckily, and kind of just building those relationships when you have a little bit of downtime in between stuff, just so that when they do get that phone call from you, because it's probably inevitable they're going to happen as being part of athletics, you're not a big scary person. It's your face they recognize. And so I just think, just to reiterate everything that everyone has said, it's so scary and it's one of the worst things I have to do, but it's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Any final thoughts from anybody before we move on to our final topic?
I think always a push toward reminding the parents, hey, if our plans change and you guys end up at a doctor, making sure that they're bringing back that documentation through
Yes.
all those communications. I just always kind of throw that in and like, hey, if you wake up tomorrow and it feels terrible and you guys head into the doc before you see me, don't forget to bring back those notes. Perpetually saying that.
Yeah, I'll hop on that and go the other direction too, Amy. I'll even say, and I feel like this helps kind of calm the parents down of that stereotype that we have of we're just going to keep kids out for an extended period of time, even if they don't need it. Which everyone has that stereotype against us. Like every school I've been to, every parent, coach, athlete, they all kind of have that in the back of their mind. I'll tell them like, hey, here's what I see today. When they ask the timeline, I'm like, hey, it's probably going to be like this long, but we're going to take it day by day. I don't know how quickly you're going to heal. You're a high school student. This might be the worst pain you've ever felt. We're going to see how you feel tomorrow. And we're going to see, I think you're going to be out for, probably 3 to 6 weeks. But if in a week and a half you're feeling great and you're showing me everything you need to show and you have good strength, good control, then we're going to test you and get you back on the field or court. I'm not going to hold you out for 3 weeks just because I think that's how long you need to be out. If you show me all the parameters that I need to see that tells me you're safe to get back on, cool. And that's helped with parents a lot when they're like, well, do we need to go to a doctor, or do we need to, how long are we going to be out? What's the plan? Telling them, hey, you can go to a doctor, give me those documentations, but also we're going to take this day by day. If it doesn't respond in the next 24, 48 hours, then we can always reevaluate and say, okay, let's go to a doc, or okay, he's good to go back in, or okay, he might be out longer. And just giving your thoughts. Don't shut down, like over communicate. Like I said before, give your thoughts on what the injury is going to progress like and what's going to happen if it does or doesn't progress like you expect it to. And I think parents really respond to the fact that you're open to kind of things changing and you're going to adapt to them changing. I feel like that's helped me a ton when communicating with parents.
Yeah, I think that also even builds trust with the student athlete, especially long term. And even, they'll talk to their teammates, hey, CJ said it was going to be 4 weeks, but through rehab and through listening to him, he got me back in 2.5, whatever the case is. Perfect. All right, let's move on and close this episode out with some strategies on de-escalation, moving into some empathy, and then finally, how to escape when you've gotten yourself pigeoned into a very deep hole of a angry person and it's no longer being productive. You're just going around in circles. Let's hear some strategies on that. CJ, what you got?
Yeah, so I think the important thing, like we mentioned earlier, is there are going to be times that you do everything perfect and it's going to escalate. It's part of the job. It's part of dealing with people, working in a job that interacts with people. So I think the most important thing is stay calm. If you get to a point where it's not productive anymore, understand it's okay to de-escalate, or if that's even failing, it's okay to say, hey, look, I understand you're upset. Let's take 5. Let's circle back around, or let's meet tomorrow if it's not something that's like an emergency. Mm-hmm. Understand that you don't have to reach a resolution at that minute, as long as you have, like, you can create a plan that both parties are like, okay, fine, I'm still not happy, but fine, we can meet tomorrow. And then that just gives some time to cool off, some time to regroup and think. That's not the worst thing in the world, because sometimes those de-escalation strategies just aren't going to work. As much as you want to empathize and see where they're coming from, it just might be destined to butt heads. It just happens. But you are the professional in this situation. You have to hold yourself to a high standard and make sure you're always taking the high road, and make sure you're always articulating and communicating what you're doing. But don't be afraid to kind of punt that resolution of the conflict to another day. If it's just, hey, we're both so riled up, this isn't going to be a productive conversation from here. Let's regroup.
Yeah, CJ, I think that's a phenomenal point and perspective. And, it really comes down to recognizing when you need to pause, take a breath, take an internal step back and continue with the conversation either at a later time, a later date, or if you really study master communicators, they're very slow to respond. They also confirm and affirm what the person is saying to them. I hear you saying this. Here's the solution, or here's the next step, right? Ashley, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think all those are amazing strategies. And so I just want to go on to, when that doesn't work, really learn to pick your battles.
Mm-hmm.
There's a point where, maybe a parent is so upset that their kid can't play. Well, maybe you just let them play and document that you suggested they don't play, and you document all of your conversations and just let it go and let them play and let them learn those lessons the hard way. I've truly learned that there are just some battles there you're not going to win. And as long as you're documenting in your, CYA, you're educating the coach, you're educating the parent. Hey, this is what's best. They shouldn't be doing this, but if you want them to play, then go for it. Whatever. I've told you my piece. And there's something to be said about the freeingness of that.
Yeah. Documenting is so huge, Ashley. And, even if it's emails or texts, retain that documentation for the life of that medical record, in my opinion, because you never know down the road when something may turn into a legal issue. And now you have those email communication chains, readily attached to that injury. I think that's huge if you really step back and think about that. CJ, what you got?
Yeah, or adding on to what Ashley said, use the coach as your best friend in that. If the parent's like, I want him clear, I want him back in, cool, go to the coach, be like, hey, if you put him
He's not
back
going to
in,
be effective.
he's not gonna be effective. Yeah. So
Yeah.
like I'm not clearing him. Parent wants him to go in, but if you do put him back in, just understand he's probably going to be a liability to the team, and
Yeah.
he's going to get more injured, and then you're going to lose him for longer. At that point, the coach will usually step in and be like, well then why are we putting him back in? I'm like, great
Parent wants
question.
it. Yeah.
But if you can't win that argument with the parent, kind of go in a roundabout way to still use your relationships with the coach and that trust to keep that kiddo in a safe spot and in a safe, like, not playing, but let the coach do the work for you, which that's been super helpful for me. Of even when kids are cleared and I'm like, okay, technically you can go back in, but like I can tell you're not going to be effective on the field. I'm like, I'll just tell the coach, technically they're cleared, but cleared and effective are two very different things. I don't think he's going to be very effective today, but if you're down to 10 people and you need 11, like, he's got a heartbeat and he's breathing, he could technically go on the field and roll around, but I just don't think he's going to be very helpful to the team.
Yeah, I mean that's such a great point, CJ. Oftentimes I think if you prove to the athlete that they're a detriment to the team, they'll hold themselves out. Ashley, did you have something to tack onto that before we move on to what Katie has to say?
I was just going to say, also making sure the coach understands their legal liability of
Yes.
hey, I'm telling you this kid shouldn't play. So if you play him and something happens, it's
It is
on
on
me.
you.
As we are documenting those communications with the parents that might get a little bit heated in a non-salacious manner, also making sure that we're looping in some of the other stakeholders within that. So making sure that
Yeah.
we're also sending that documentation to the athletic director and our supervisor, and sometimes even the coach, so that everybody's on the same page as to how that conversation actually occurred. So, and I even say like, hey, I don't know if this parent is going to call you. They seemed pretty upset last night. Just in case you get a phone call in the morning, this is what happened. That way they get a chance to review it. They're not being blindsided by an angry parent, and they have a chance to be like, okay, hey, this is what actually happened. So they can come back at that parent in a slightly more calm way and be like, yes, I am aware of the situation. This is what our athletic trainer has told us about the situation, so that they can respond in a calm and measured manner as well.
Absolutely, Amy. Circling in those other stakeholders is very crucial. And also, don't forget about your medical director. If it is something that you strongly feel the person should be held out and you've got a very angry parent, use a third party. Say, hey, I've discussed this case with our medical director, and our medical director, even though he hasn't seen your child, agrees with my findings, and the two of us really think that you should follow this plan of care, or whatever that looks like.
Yeah, or have them call. I mean, sometimes you can. We've all had this where I say one thing, especially when we're students. I feel like it happens a lot. I say one thing, they don't understand, they're combative. Somebody
Yeah.
else says the exact same thing, like, oh, I'm like, I just said that. Why didn't you listen to me? So have your medical director like talk to them. It happens all the time on football. Like, the doc will say something and they'll be like, well, I want to play. And then I'll say it. But because they see me every day, they're like, oh, I'm like, doc just told you the same thing. Like, it shouldn't take it coming from another person to be effective, but sometimes that's what it takes to get through. So
Yeah, that's 100% true. Before CJ closes this out, I'll throw out some book recommendations. Everyone on the committee knows that I have some books ready to go, but when it comes to effective communication, self growth and self education, I think is very huge. You can only know how you talk to other people, and by reading a book you let somebody else, yourself, slap yourself across the face through reading a book about maybe some mistakes that you're making. So here are a few very short book recommendations I think can apply to everything we've discussed in this podcast episode. Number one is Am I Making Myself Clear? A very good book on effective communication. Another one when it comes to dealing with different personalities is Wired That Way and Personality Plus. Both of those books really break down how to communicate to individuals that have different personalities from yourself. Um, and then the great John Maxwell, he's got a phenomenal one that ties back into sports specifically. Everybody communicates, few connect. It really talks about slowing down and listening to what others are saying and meeting that person where they are. And then finally, crucial conversations, which closes out exactly what we were talking about, de escalating those volatile conversations. That book, I think, is really going to give you some good strategies on how to de escalate and really take it into a productive manner. So, CJ, you want to close out this episode?
Sure. I think the biggest takeaway is, for me at least in my career, is conflict's not always bad. Like it gets a negative connotation when we have to have these conversations and these moments, but I've also had parents and coaches and ADs where I have a moment of conflict and we resolve it, and that just like forges a bond,
Yeah.
and they become one of my biggest advocates. One of one of the parents that was the most like in my corner was one that we started out with kind of having not really a small conflict, but kind of having a combative, not combative even, just having one of those conversations
Didn't
that,
see
in my
eye to
opinion,
eye.
yeah, in my opinion, it could have gone poorly quickly, but it didn't, and she became like my biggest advocate. So
Yeah.
don't always look at it as a bad thing. Conflict is the opportunity to speak with someone and get them on your side and get them to understand and find a middle ground and kind of forge a relationship with them. So take that into account. So any closing thoughts from everyone? I think we've kind of covered this
Yeah, I
pretty
think
well.
so. If you have personal experiences or maybe something to add to this episode, we do want to build a community of like-minded athletic trainers who want to advance the profession. So, share this podcast episode with your fellow athletic trainers, with your coaches, administrators, parents, whoever you want to, and also drop us some feedback on this episode down in the comment box below.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things I wanted to mention.
You're
With
welcome.
sharing experiences. Thank you. I was like, where am I? What? Chat with other ATs and have these conversations, because I feel like the only way that you learn. This is why I love these book recommendations from Ryan. But even to make it more athletic training specific, talk with your colleagues and share these situations, because it's better to learn through somebody else and what they've done and the mistakes they've made than to make them yourself. And then it makes life a lot easier. So
Yeah. Katie, I noticed you just hopped back on. Did you have anything before CJ says that's all, folks?
Well, I didn't know where I lost you guys at because I was here. I could hear you guys. You guys
Okay.
couldn't hear me. So I was like, oh, I don't
Yeah,
know
you were
where.
gone for like
Yeah.
the last section.
No, but I was watching you guys talk. Literally my computer cut out a minute ago was when I lost you. When I lost
Okay, well
you.
then
So the
maybe we
joys.
maybe we got you. We'll look in post and see
You
if we
didn't
got
because
you.
I was muted and then I jumped in
Oh.
and then you guys went right past me and then never came back and I was like, oh, okay, bye.
hey, throw it in
Well,
here. Now's your
yeah,
chance. What you
now's
got?
your chance.
Okay.
What you got?
Hold on, let me rewind my thoughts. So I agree with a lot of what Ashley was saying. I think it's totally injury dependent and legal dependent on that liability piece of it, right? You have to have your school's backing to be able to throw someone into a game if that's what the parent is adamantly dependent on. But if there's a functionality test you can run in front of that parent or that coach or that child that makes them see why you're saying no, that goes a long way as opposed to just saying no, right? If you can't single leg hop, but you're going to play in a basketball game, how are you going to do a layup? Like, if you can just show that piece of things to the student, to the parent, to whoever, you're not just saying no for the point of saying no. You're saying no because it's a safety issue because of whatever reason. And that really goes a long way with that parent to show, no, I'm just trying to make sure your kid is playing safely because I don't want them getting further injured, right? On top of that, when you deal with the invisible injury, the concussion where the parent can't see why their kid's not playing yet, You have to get a little more creative. One, you can just like, hey, state guidelines say like it's a legal law, not a Katie law. You actually have to follow this rule. There's nothing I can do about it. My hands are tied. It was reported this way. These are the return to play steps. But there's testing you can do in that scenario too, right? You can do further concussion testing that says, here, look at this. And then fall back on your protocols and your procedure manual that says our medical director has the final say, right? If they go doctor shopping, your surgeon, if you had surgery, is the only person who can clear you. If your surgeon is out of the office for whatever reason, only an equal surgeon can clear you from that injury. And that is why, right? If we're talking about a broken finger that, if you can't sip tea for the rest of your life, no one's going to complain about it. That's a wholly different scenario than I can't lift my arm over my head for the rest of my life, or I can't walk without a limp and until I have a knee replacement at the age of 35, right? Like there's all different scenarios there. So it's a matter of explaining the functionality and what your side of why they shouldn't do it is, so that the parent understands like no one's maliciously holding your kid out because they don't want to see a kid play sports. Why would we go into this profession if we did? But here's some reasons why I'm making this decision. Goes a lot further than just no because I said so, no because my athletic director is going to say I said so, and no because the next person in line said so. Because at the end of the day, no one wants a lawsuit that says we're going to allow this kid to play. By the time we get there, that kid's already cleared to play at this point anyway. But it goes a lot further to say those conversations first.
Great points, Katie. All right, CJ, ready to close this out with another successful episode in the books?
Okay, that will just about wrap it up for today's episode on conflict resolution. As always, we want to hear back from you guys, so feel free to shoot us an email with your experiences, your thoughts, strategies that you've developed over the years, because we can still learn from everyone else. This is something that we are all always going to be continuously improving upon. So until next time, keep an eye out for new episodes dropping. They drop every other Friday, so be sure you're keeping an eye on that on Spotify. Make sure you don't miss any episodes. But for the committee, I've been CJ Rosenborough alongside Ryan Hart, and thank you so much for listening. See you next time.